I think the most important thing is to listen. I really do, because we have all these kind of mantras. This is how I grow my child's self-esteem. And we have this idea that there's a technique. And I think self-esteem comes from believing you are enough and that you're an interesting person and that you matter. People want to matter. And when we don't listen to our teenagers, they feel intrinsically like they don't matter and what they say doesn't actually matter.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast. Each week, we help parents and educators keep students safe on social media so they can someday shine online. Before we get into today's program, make sure you join our newsletter to get the most up-to-date social media alerts at smartsocial.com/newsletter. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we send out the latest social media app resources that help parents and educators to navigate this challenging landscape with their students. Now let's get to the program.
Hello, I'm Rachel Richards. I'm the host of Teenagers Untangled, which is an audio hug podcast for parents going through the teenage years. I was a BBC correspondent and CNBC World News anchor and became a parent and also coached parenting in inner city London for several years and decided to set up this podcast because I was asked by a fellow parent to please help with parenting teenagers because there isn't enough support.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here today. I'm so pumped because we're doing a few things and we want to welcome you. Impressive background, by the way, all the things that you've done on camera. I'm so impressed, but also now your knowledge and your grace and helping other parents to say, here's how we can help your kids thrive in this online world. I've got about 8 questions for you. We're going to take a lot of this really great content and put it also into some of our exciting modules that help teens and parents all over the United States to carefully navigate these topics. So the first question I have for you is, what do you think students find most addictive about social media apps?
In my experience, I have 2 young teenagers, well, actual middle-aged teenagers, and talk a lot to teenagers about this. And the problem is they have no choice but to be on these apps in their minds because that's where the socializing is happening. One of my teens stayed off the apps for quite a long time, and she eventually said, "Mummy, if I'm not on the apps, I don't exist." Teenagers feel this need to connect with other teenagers almost to the extent that they feel like they're in shark-infested waters if they are not connected somewhere in a lifeboat somehow. So the apps provide that. Whichever app you're on, they will provide some of that. The other thing that's happening is when they get onto them, they end up in a mode where they are scrolling without noticing because the apps are so clever at giving them dopamine hits and making them feel like they're relaxing when they're not really relaxing.
Oh, that's so true. You just hit on so much. We feel like we're relaxing, and is it really giving us the
Not.
relaxingness that we need? So let's move into the next question I have for you. What tricks, techniques, or little tiny widgets do you think the social media apps are using or installing in their apps to keep teens watching for longer?
Oh, wow. I did entire episodes on some of these things. I mean, it varies from app to app. But what I've seen is they will have obviously dopamine hits. So one of the things they do is they hold back the amount of likes you'll get. Let's say you post a photo or something that you think is great, and people on these apps to get recognition, and they hold back the amount of likes so that you keep checking, and then you'll suddenly get a dump of likes, so 20 likes. And that will give them a massive dopamine rush and then will make them keep going back because it's exciting. So that's one of the things they do. They hold back the amount of likes you get. And what they also do is they know that when you put down your phone, when you leave it, if you've been using it quite a lot or one of these apps, there will be a cortisol rush about 15 minutes afterwards that will make you think, I'm missing something. So this brings them back. I think that on Snapchat and things like that, you can see using Snap Maps, for example, what people are doing. So they'll start hunting around. You can see what other people have liked, which will then keep you in the stories. And the stories are one of the things my kids get stuck on. If they're very honest with me, because we talk so much about this, all of them are designed to be very short. And before the actual story is properly finished, the next one comes on. YouTube does this very well. So there's no real reason to ever stop. So when you were first on the internet, you used to have to click through to the next bit of the page. Now it's just constant scrolling. So that in itself means that you can end up being sucked in. You go on for, oh, I've got 5 minutes, I'll just pop on. And then you've got sucked into this thing that's constantly presenting new information and it keeps you going.
So true. Excellent, excellent answer too. The next question I have for you is, how would you advise students to choose who to follow on social media? Now we have the question here is typically which influencers, but let's set aside the word influencers. How should we select as teens, and what would you tell parents? What should they think about before following someone?
There's a very interesting thing, a preamble to this, which is that I was talking to a woman who's in human resources last night. And she said to me, when people come in to get a job, they have to sign a document which says that all of their social media can be gone through. And they come back with dossiers this thick. And this is part of the interview process. And she said, we can see who people have followed. We can see what information they've been tracking through. And she said, when we find something that's not right, we have to say, I'm sorry, we can't go any further with this interview. So that's one thing to think about if you start following anybody. It leaves a trace. Let's talk about it in a very positive way. What you're looking for is you're looking for people who would be your friends in real life, people who genuinely will tell you things that are interesting and will lead you in a direction that genuinely interests you. And we know instinctively when someone says something or does something that feels a bit uncomfortable, in real life, we would sort of back off a bit. If that's happening online, if you're seeing something, they say something you feel like, oh, I'm not sure, you shouldn't really be following them. And I think we've had a lot of problems with the manosphere in the UK. And I think it's happening everywhere with boys looking for role models. They want somebody who makes them feel pumped up, who makes them feel good about masculinity. And if you're interested in that, for example, you need to be looking for men who, when you're 20, 30 years on from now, what sort of people in real life would you like to meet who actually had the same values as the values you have at home? And I think that's one of the things that's really important to use to sift through. So that's kind of my guideline.
I love that. And that moves into the next question that I want to ask you. How can students use social media apps in a positive way?
So the way I've talked to my girls is that they need to think of social media apps as an amazing, exciting opportunity to learn things about the world that they couldn't know otherwise. So, for example, I'm fascinated by parenting. I'm fascinated by food. I love sourdough bread. I will go onto an app and I will specifically look for things that interest me, not just anything that gets delivered to me. So that's one of the things to do because each of them has algorithms. And the more you look at something, the longer you linger on something, the more of that information you'll get fed. So choose wisely what you actually choose to watch. Choose wisely who you follow because you will be sent more information like that. And in terms of actually putting stuff online, I've always said to my girls, understand that this is your shop window. This is how people are going to view you. So you need to think very carefully before you post anything or follow anyone in particular, because you're saying something about yourself. You're leaving a footprint. So make sure it's a positive footprint. And when you comment, make sure it's a positive comment.
I love that. And what a lovely way of saying that. It's your shop window. In America, we call that a retail store, and people walk by and they want to see what are the best products.
Yes.
Why should they walk in? Why should they all of a sudden trade their hard-earned money for a product and stuff like that? And businesses are seeing our shop window, which is so true. And
And don't be a
they're
bait and click. You know, don't be oh, this is who I am. And then you're not that person. Be authentic online.
yeah, 100%. Put your best foot forward, but also be authentic. I love that. So let's jump into the next question about regulation. What techniques do you think students might be able to use to try and regulate the amount of screen time or the amount of time they spend on social media?
I think you need to make a contract with yourself before you go online or you think about this, which is what am I actually going online for? And what do I think is a sufficient amount of time to be online? Because if you don't think about that before you go online, you can't really regulate yourself. Often when I talk to my kids, they say, I've got a break or then I'll maybe go on for 10 minutes. You need to say it's going to be 10 minutes. So maybe set a timer before you go on, or maybe put a speed hump in the road so that you think, I'm only going to look on it once I've done this. And you need to be very conscious that when you have got into your online world, it's very easy to disappear into it. I would tend to find times and people who will interrupt it if I feel like I got stuck. So my girls have given me permission, because we've had lots of conversations about this, and sometimes they do get stuck. They find it hard to come off, for me to say, hey, are you stuck? Do you want a little bit of help? So
Mm.
it's finding things around you that will scaffold your choice of being online, and knowing how long before. Be intentional. Don't just pop on, be intentional.
I love that. Are you stuck?
Are you
And
stuck? And they do get stuck. And the thing is,
right.
we have to be open and honest with our teens and not criticize them. Don't be judgmental, because this is hard. We all find it hard. So we need to be kind to ourselves and to our teens, and just say, it's okay. I know this is hard, and I'm not trying to take it away from you. I'm trying to regulate it so that you can get the most out of it.
Yeah. Are you stuck? What a kind way of saying that. So the next question I have for you is, how do you see excessive screen time on social media apps impacting students?
Personally, I think that it starts to make them feel miserable if they are on screens too much. My daughter tends to go on screens often if she's feeling not quite nice. She might be bored, she might be trying to avoid something, or she's not feeling great about herself. And so she's using as a means of getting away from the life that she has at home. I'm not talking about our personal home, I'm talking about just being a teenager in this world, which can be very difficult. And I think the problem with spending too much time online is that you get divorced from what really is going on in your real life. And it's a very good way of stopping yourself from dealing with difficult feelings and thoughts. And when we do that, or we divert from work that we'd really like to be doing, or we know we should be doing, things build up, things mount up. You never actually deal with the things you should be dealing with. So to me, it's that stuff that worries me about being online too much.
That's brilliant. What would you recommend parents do to help teens regulate their screen time on social media apps?
Obviously, there are things you can set up that within the actual apps themselves, or within the devices that they're using, which I'm sure you've covered, and there's a lot of it, and it's evolving all the time. So I won't go into that specifically, but there is that. I wouldn't do that without having a conversation with them first. I actually wrote an entire blog about this specific thing, how you set all of this up, because I think it must be about a conversation with them about what they really want to achieve in life, and how much being online matters to them, and acknowledging that, and then asking for permission to help them regulate their time. It's that stuff. It is the checking in with and saying, are you a bit stuck? Can we put it away? Can we find something else that you might like to do right now? Why don't you do your homework first, and then you can go online, and then just getting a time for them. And also remove their phones at night. Remove their computer. Do not have these things in their rooms. Take them away, because it's almost impossible for a teenager to have a phone in their room and then switch it off when they should.
Yeah, that's a $1,000,000 tip. And for all the parents listening right now, I just absolutely adore this phrase. It's the phrases we use with teens that are we or the enemy or the ally? And it's so hard to be the ally sometimes when you're the parent, because my parents are uncool. Kids seem to say 1,000 times a day. I love that. Are you unstuck? And I want to share with everybody just a little tiny nugget of knowledge, a tool that we're backing. We don't get paid by them or anything, but it's called ClearSpace. And it is a little tiny app that will throw in, if you want to open Instagram, it says, okay, first you have to breathe in for 4 seconds and then breathe out for 4 seconds. And then it gives you a positive quote about how to reduce your screen time. And it says, how long do you want to spend on this app? You have to pick 1 minute, 5, 10, 20. And you pick that and it goes, great. You can now start your session. 1 minute before your 20 minutes is up, it says this app will close in 1 minute. Finish up your stuff. And then all of a sudden you have that container and you're like, oh, and because it asks you to be intentional about how long you'll be on there, is it 5 minutes? Is it 20? You go, okay, well, I'm not as angry about it closing now. I feel like I set that goal. There's about a dozen of these apps out there. That's made a personal difference in all of our staff's lives. It's been really neat. We're all testing them out. So I want to dive into some positive mental health awareness questions for all of our educator partners that are listening to this right now, and parents. We listen to about 1,000 parents a year, and we want to make sure we are able to listen and let you know that what you're going through is probably pretty normal. But we do have a whole coaching program and some ideas, and then we guide you through our resources. So, Rachel, I'd like to ask you the following questions. What are some examples of student negative self talk that you want parents to know about?
It will definitely vary from child to child. I do hear a fair amount of negative self talk, and it tends to be coming from a non growth mindset where they, rather than they say, oh, I failed at this, I'm a failure. And instead of saying, that was just one exam, and they start to internalize the sense that there's something wrong with them when they make a mistake. And the thing that I've seen a growth of, which really concerns me actually, is the number of times I'll have teenagers come to me and they'll say, because I'm open and they don't mind saying things to me, they'll say, I think I'm autistic. I've got anxiety. And they'll give me a condition because they see a lot about this stuff online. And I'm not trying to undermine any of these issues, but they'll self diagnose and they'll think there's something wrong with them because they can't make eye contact, for example. And they often need a parent to say, that's really hard to do. And it's very normal to battle a bit with that. So let's
Mm,
talk about exactly what you're talking about, because I'm hearing an awful lot of that.
that's really fascinating and so true. And they'll basically find a reason to explain why they're not feeling the way they think they want to
Yeah,
feel.
these things that they're experiencing that are absolutely normal, fundamental problems with growing up, fundamentally difficult things like, I can't make conversations. There's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. That's a skill. We're not born able to make conversations. And what worries me is there's so much on social media is telling them that if you feel uncomfortable or you're not quite good at something, there's something wrong with you. And then there's nothing wrong with half of these children.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's dive into the next topic I'd like to ask you about. What activities or choices make negative self talk worse for students? So, let's say they start to think about something. We as adults do this too. Like, oh, I'm just never going to be good at this. A lot of parents will tell me, I'm just not tech savvy, Josh. And we're always trying to say, whoa, let's flip that around. I'm learning Snapchat. If students or teens are approached by a negative self talk thought, what are some activities or choices that might make that self talk worse for them?
Looking for confirmation that there is something wrong with them indeed. So actually, again, going online, trying to find something that will prove that you are whatever you think you are, rather than trying to get somebody to talk it through as an individual. And I know this can be incredibly hard for some people because they don't have someone that they can talk to about these things. But it's so much better to have a meaningful discussion about it. Going online to switch off those feelings and using drugs, using vapes. I know that some children use nicotine because they think that it will calm them down and then they'll be fine. And I think it's really important to actually sit with those really uncomfortable feelings and say, it's okay. This is part of being a human being. I can take little steps to move beyond where I am. And it's not me. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with me.
I like that. Sitting with those negative thoughts to marinate on them and figure out and to unlock them. I like that so much. Now, let's move in that direction of when we're sitting with those negative self thoughts and we're coaching a team through what are best practices. It's okay to not have a perfect day. It's totally fine. But what does good self-esteem or good self-confidence look like in an average teen in your opinion, and how would that benefit their day?
I think it comes back to that growth mindset. I think it comes back to a sense that I'm not going to get things right all the time. I'm good enough as I am without having to prove anything in particular. And when I do stumble, fall, make terrible mistakes, it's going to be okay because I'm in a learning process. This is what it is to be a teenager, and it's okay. It's okay to struggle. When I see kids who have poor self esteem, they're usually trying to use bullying tactics with other kids or hiding away. Like some teenagers are going to want to be in their room. There's nothing wrong with that because they're just trying to kind of figure their life out. But when they're spending a lot of time hiding from having conversations about things, it's often because it's too painful and they don't really know how to do that. So I think good self esteem in teenagers, you can spot it when they're able to talk about making mistakes and they don't feel too bad about it.
That's terrific. They're giving themselves some grace, if you will.
Yes, and we need to do that. We need to do that with ourselves to show them how you do that. Because when we're too hard on ourselves, our teenagers will also pick up on that. Or we're too hard on the teenagers. We need to allow them to make mistakes and go, oh, you didn't work that one out. That's fine. Let's, try again.
Yeah, on that same topic, what advice would you give to parents to help them boost their kids' self-confidence or self-esteem?
I think the most important thing is to listen. I really do, because we have all these kind of mantras. This is how I grow my child's self esteem. And we have this idea that there's a technique. And I think self esteem comes from believing you are enough and that you're an interesting person and that you matter. People want to matter. And when we don't listen to our teenagers, they feel intrinsically like they don't matter and what they say doesn't actually matter. There are two techniques you can use, and one is active listening and the other one's super silence. So actively being curious. What is my teen thinking and feeling? And how can I get that out of them? So when they tell you something, just say, oh, that's really interesting. So it sounds like you're saying this. It sounds like you're finding it really hard to study at the moment. Is that right? And if they go, no, it's not that, you say, oh, maybe you can explain it to me. Or if they say, yeah, that's completely right, you say, oh, that's interesting. That must feel really hard. And the super silence is just letting them talk. When they start talking, because often they don't want to start, once they start talking, just go, yeah, yeah. And just look at them, put down what you're doing, take the time with them, because this is the stuff that builds self esteem. I think it just starts completely, that's the bedrock.
That's beautiful. For the parents listening right now, what Rachel is also saying without saying is notice how she didn't say, well, let me teach you how to fix that.
Oh,
You wrap
yes, don't
Rachel,
fix them.
yeah, don't fix them, but rather just sit there and love on them. And
Yeah,
sometimes there's tough parenting, which is
yeah.
love means that they're going to not like you a little bit. But in this case, listen, try to reiterate. Oh, I bet that would be hard.
And let them come to the answer. Like the problem is we hear something, we think, oh, I know how you do this. I know what you need to do now. Don't wait and coach them. Let them say, so what do you think would be the right thing to do? Could it be
Oh,
this or
that's,
could it be that? Maybe there's a good way.
I want to ask you one last question. What kinds of actions or things can parents do? And it's similar, you've already mentioned many of them, but are there any other actions or things parents can do to encourage students to either be more motivated or confident about themselves? When I pause before, I want to tell everybody, parent, if your kids recently have had, my kids were doing really great, and all of a sudden 3 months ago, something happened where they got a lot of anxiety and they're less motivated and they don't want to do anything. And I don't know why. You're normal parents, first of all. A lot of teens are going through that. Rachel, what would you suggest to parents who might have a kid that's got a little bit of a lack of motivation the last few months? And what would you do to help them encourage their teen to be able to get out of that funk?
I think levels of stress rise when we feel that we don't have autonomy. The teenagers who might have felt motivated before and then they've gone into a funk, often it's because they feel like they don't really have it in them. They don't have the space to express themselves for what's going wrong. I've had this. I've had the teenager who really just wasn't coping with school and were not enjoying it, not being motivated. What we need to do is hand the autonomy back to them by sitting with them. So, for example, with my child, I said, so what do you want in the long term? We need to help them, give them our eyes to look over the place where they're at and where they're trying to be and help them to think about that. So with mine, I said, well, what do you want to do when you leave school? Well, I don't know. And I said, oh, you don't know at all? Are there any things that interest you? It doesn't have to be a job. And she started talking about university. I said, okay, well, if you want to go to university, so you can actually talk through how their life might be beyond where they're stuck at the moment. And the other thing I said to her was, okay, you are finding this really hard. Like, find out why. Like, are they bored? Are they just finding it really too hard to do? Have they lost their friends? It could be something where they've lost their friendship group and it's left them feeling like they're isolated and there's no meaning to life. So don't assume you know what the reason is for them not working. That's the fundamental thing. Find out what it is at the heart of it. And then if it's that they don't really enjoy the subject, they find it boring, then you can just say, yeah, I can imagine it would be boring. Just go into every class and find something that interests you. That's all I'm asking of you. Just find something and work hard at that. and that might get you through where you're at right now.
I love this. This is terrific. One of my favorite things that you've said here today is, "Are you stuck?" And that I think that it encompasses so much more than just, "Are you stuck online right now, not being able to get out of the algorithm?" Which is what you meant, and I think that's beautiful because it's such a kind way to say, "I'm your ally. I'm your mom. I'm your dad. I'm your friend. I'm your aunt, uncle. Are you stuck?" But also, I think there's a lot of parents that are stuck right now too. And
Mm,
for any of the parents that are listening right now, first of all, we love you. You're awesome. We understand.
absolutely.
And you're not going through anything that millions of other parents all over the world are going through. And in fact, we talk with parents in Africa, in England, in the United States, the West Coast, East Coast, in Canada, who we absolutely love as well. Yes, every community is different, every school district, but these struggles kids are going through are very similar because they all want an iPhone, an Android, or something of that sort. And so you're not alone. You may think, I'm in a corner of the world that no one understands. Understand. You can click the links below to learn more about our awesome guest here today, Rachel Richards. And then also to learn how Smart Social has resources to help guide you through that. A lot of free resources. If you're a school district listening to this right now, we'd love to protect your community, to help families in your community, and to help everybody keep their kids safe on social media so the kids can someday shine online. Rachel, I want to thank you for joining us from the other side of the world. I'm really grateful for you today.
Thank you so much. It's been really, really enjoyable.
Thanks a lot. And to the rest of you, remember to keep it light, bright, and polite because your kids are watching what you're doing online. We'll see all of you on a future episode. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for listening to the smartsocial.com podcast with this week's topics. We invite you to join the smartsocial.com VIP program. As a very informed parent VIP member, you will learn about the dangers and benefits of social media for your kids and get tips every week to keep your family safe online and, most importantly, to teach your students how to shine online. We have over 130 detailed app guides that cover apps like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and 100 plus apps you might not have heard of, but your students may have visited or downloaded. Find out more and join today at smartsocial.com/VIP. Please remember to rate, subscribe, and review so we can continue to help more parents and educators just like you. I'm your host, Josh Ochs. As always, remember to keep it light, bright, and polite. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day.